Aloha, and welcome to It's All About the Keiki. I'm Kristine Altwies, and with me today is an extremely special guest and longtime dear friend, James B. McCarthy. Welcome.
Hi, nice to be here.
Thanks for coming. I was about to say your title, and then I wasn't sure. We say musician, educator, actor, but we say educator first now. We say you're an educator of children.
Yes.
And a musician, and an actor,
yes.
and a songwriter,
yes.
and a performer, and an all-around good guy.
Yeah.
We're so glad to have you.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
Good. All right. So, as we said before we started rolling, I'm worried about getting everything covered because we have a short show and so much life that you've lived that I want to share with people. So, let's talk first about what you're doing right now, professionally.
Okay. Right, in terms of working with kids, right now I'm finishing up a residency with Kahala Elementary School that is focused on building empathy, and that's been a long-term project for us there. The school's supported, part of the funding comes from State Foundation of Culture and the Arts, and the school supports it all across the curriculum so that kids have the opportunity from kindergarten through 5th grade to engage with ways to have kindness towards others and bravery for themselves, and to build empathy. So right now I'm really interested in what happens between 3rd and 5th grade. I think it used to be that you had to think of what happened between 5th and 7th, but now it seems like it's
kids are maturing quicker.
Maturing quicker, and part of that's technology, and part of that's I don't know what, but we create an atmosphere in the classroom where they can take social situations of their own choosing from their own lives and use drama skills to try to find ways to come up with solutions.
Wow, and this is curriculum that you've developed yourself.
Yes.
And you've been granted the funds that are necessary to bring this to kids.
Yeah.
Wow, it sounds really important. And you're doing it probably low tech? Without a lot of tech?
Without a lot of tech, yeah. It's just, our human tech, the brain, and our imaginations and a lot of physical activity. So the desks are all pushed back, and they go through a really simple kind of actors training like you and I have done, and develop the skills to express themselves in a dramatic format, both individually and then working collaboratively with others. And some of the inspiration for it comes from work that our teaching artist group, our Ohana here in Hawaii, is one of the best in the country in terms of the thought partnering and the kind of support that we've had and the training and our long-term connection with each other. But this particular work is my inspiration working partially out of Keith Johnstone, who was the grandfather of Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh, okay, yeah, great improv.
Great improv guy,
okay.
and Augusta Boal, who used acting and theater in social context, starting in the favela in Rio de Janeiro, and then did it in Sweden, and then became like a council member or an ambassador.
You know what I love about improv? I just got to say, because thinking about kids and improv, and even if people hear improv, and if they're normal people like me, improv freaks me out. Like the thought of having to stand up in front of people and be funny and creative and spontaneous. But the one thing I think that we should all take away from the training of improv is saying yes to everything that comes your way, right? And you're probably using that with the kids.
Yes, I mean saying yes in terms of when you're working with your partner, but it also is they're in a situation, they're on the playground and some kind of altercation breaks out over a soccer ball. They need to improvise, and their moral compass needs to be strong enough within them that they can respond in a way that benefits them and the situation. So it takes a lot of thinking.
And it takes training the human interaction and compassion muscle, right?
Yes.
Like all muscles need to be worked out in order to know how to use them in a moment of crisis. So I imagine you're doing a lot of that.
Yes, yeah. And that's I mean, it's fun. They think it's fun, but then when the classroom gets very, very active and a little bit crazy and silly, but then when we start getting to the personal, the situations they really are trying to deal with, and they're really, chewing on and contemplating, the classroom gets very, very quiet, very reflective. So I think that's, and I'm going to segue a little bit here, that training of the brain there, so it's good for empathy, but it's also really powerful in terms of building reflection and critical thinking, and then we combine it with a observational. It's kind of like scientific inquiry. You look at somebody's frozen. We do a lot of frozen shapes that gives them the physical control for whatever they're expressing in their imagination, and then we look at those and try to describe them before we infer what the person's feeling.
Because so much of what people are saying now, critical of tech-heavy lifestyle for kids, is that they're losing the ability to read social cues and to interact socially and with emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's what you're training and sort of reinforcing.
Yeah, and also training how to know your own mind. These are the steps. It's like, oh, I see that, you know, I know that when somebody's shoulders are up and their eyebrows are down, that there's some kind of feeling going on. They might not be feeling too good in some way, and maybe I can respond to that, or maybe I should be aware of it.
Right.
So there's all these levels, you know, neurodiversity. Every single child that enters in that classroom is responding differently.
And so much of what we want to be aware of in educating and teaching kids nowadays and creating the best contributors of the future is understanding the brain, right? Like there is this sort of touchy-feely component that's really good, but it also comes down to cold, hard science. And we know enough about the brain and the development of the brain now to tap into some of that in this training that you're doing, which otherwise might seem kind of touchy-feely, but it's really rooted in hard science.
Yes, yeah. And those that when somebody's in an abusive or highly critical situation, even verbally abusive, you can have long-range effects on the brain. And so for those kids who've had that situation, the drama opportunity, the acceptance that we try to build in, and the inclusion and trying to, it's like sometimes there's a student in the class that just really shut down for whatever reason. Maybe it's a child, maybe it's something's happening at home, who knows what's happening. But I'm not really the counselor. I'll use the counselor's insight and then design the entire class just so that child is comfortable and gradually like open up, and then that level of confidence is like a gift for the future, and that to me is really one of the things that drives me.
Yeah, and I just want to underscore, because this is my constant sort of platform anywhere, anytime anyone will listen to me, is that you're doing all this with no tech. You know, so the idea that we need, and I'm not saying technology doesn't have its place, but the idea that we need technology, you know, for everything is really, you know, here you're proving that you can do so much. In fact, I think what you're doing is probably only possible without technology around to distract.
You can still utilize it. I mean, there's lots of cool programs now for kids to, like, you know, follow dances, and like some people have done some really funny stuff, and I'm constantly going into classrooms where the teacher is like, wait, as I'm about to show up, and they're running some kind of video that the kids are jumping around to. But I can do that. The teacher could do that. Anybody could do that if they just decide they can do it. You know, we don't. Yeah. So, and there's no lack of willingness and inspiration on the kids' parts.
Right.
You know?
Kids are just waiting to be engaged.
Yeah, just waiting. Yeah. If you're ready to do it. You know?
And so many people may know you around town as the guy who is always performing Irish music at Irish pubs, or who's at State Foundation performing, or who's doing around town storytelling stuff. But I also want to remind people that you have a master's in education from Harvard, and that you are a scholar well known on the East Coast, international traveler and presenter, and we're just lucky to have you here in Hawaii from time to time.
I'm glad.
Mostly.
I'm glad to be here.
So,
I'm glad to be here.
Let's talk about Carnegie Hall.
Oh. So this past summer, it was the 4th annual International Teaching Artists Conference, and it was held in a combined Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center, mostly at Carnegie Hall in their new Resnick Education Wing. It was 250 teaching artists from 35 countries, people using teaching arts in all the media, but in a multiplicity of environments. And like one of the ones I really liked is there were Greek teaching artists working with Syrian refugees in refugee centers and refugee camps with absolutely no budget. So they made all their instruments, they were doing music, so they made all their instruments from recycled material. So it was being there and sort of, you know, getting a sense of where we are, you know, looking around the world, and hey, Hawaii's doing pretty good, doing really cool stuff. So I was a sponsored delegate. They funded me to go there. It was pretty exciting. And I'm still in touch with some of those folks. I'm really interested in, I love working here, and I'm really interested in working on the mainland. And in fact, I'll be going to Nepal shortly and doing a teaching artist workshop there for Nepali teachers. That's pretty
Right,
exciting.
and that's Nepal next to India, not DuPaul in the Midwest.
Yeah, no.
Okay,
no,
that's
right,
a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, and when you go off and you learn new skills and you interact with other people from around the world, you're bringing that all back to Hawaii, which is, I think, the point of having you on the show, is that we have this great resource in you here in Hawaii, and we're lucky to have people like you who go out and collect new information and then bring it back to our small island community.
And I've been really fortunate to have lots and lots of ways to do that, but now it's like how do you... People know me as doing certain things, but then all these experiences, the Carnegie Hall experience, and I was at Gettysburg, which we can talk about more, that informs me. Working with musicians on the West Coast informs me, and how do we bring that, and how do I bring that back and make it as accessible as possible, and still make a living? I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, that's kind of necessary. And we have such a rich cultural tapestry already of music. Music is such a wonderful life force here in Hawaii. I think more than in many of the states that I visited. It's not uncommon that people walk around with a ukulele, or that the kids in the school, most of them will know how to play a few chords or something, right? So it seems like a language that you can tap into pretty easily with the kids, right?
Yeah. In fact, I use music a lot in my drama classes. So I brought a little ukulele on along today. This is just throw this in here. This is a song about I've worked with after-school programs and preschool programs, and one of the major complaints is always somebody got more carrots than me, or that person has a bigger cookie than me. And so I thought that like a superstar kind of, a John Henry character in a preschool kind of setting would be able to just dish out the same snacks to everybody, exactly the same, no matter, never make a mistake. So this is a song called Snack Slingin' Sam.
Snack, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Snack slinging Sam, snack slinging Sam, he's the best snack slinger that would am. He's sitting around, not doing a thing, he just pick up a snack and give it a sling. Now all the kids, they would smack their lips when Sam come by with their favorite chips. There was corn and potato of every kind, there was even some of taro. That's Hawaiian. Snack slinging Sam, he's the best snack slinger that would am. Sitting around, not doing a thing, he just pick up a snack and give it a sling.
Beautiful. Thank you. I love hearing your voice.
Thanks.
I never tire of it.
Thank you.
So you wrote that song.
I wrote that song.
Snack
slinging
slinging. That
Sam.
could also become a tongue twister. You could have like multiple purposes.
So
the song.
it's written in a like a Dr. Seuss kind of cadence, but it's a parallel to the folk legend of John Henry and the steam drill. So another guy comes along with a vending machine, says he's better at giving out snacks than Sam's, but his vending machine is like full of sugar and stuff, and they have a duel, like an old-fashioned Western duel in the middle of town, and Sam ends up winning.
Yeah, so man against machine and natural versus sugar laden. You got lots of like layers
and
of
honoring Dr. Seuss, a lot of wordplay, so you got to kind of keep up with it. So
cool.
I'm very happy about it. It's not done, but
it's okay. Work in progress.
Yeah,
It's always good to have something you're working on, right?
Yes.
I get that's never a problem for you though.
Yes, this is never a problem. Yeah.
So let's talk about kids today, because you are kind of an authority, because you work with kids all the time and you are like right up close with kids, and you see them struggling and engaging with you, and you've been doing this for a few years. So you've maybe even seen changes in kids over the years that you've been working. So for our audience, I'm always curious to share, when an expert comes on, just some thoughts about, what do you see in kids today, or what kinds of things do you see that are successful in getting through to kids? Maybe tips for people who are working with kids, or people who may have challenging kids in their lives. I've seen you at work with kids, and I know that you are sort of a magnet for kids, and that they will sit at rapt attention and sort of stare at you and listen to you very carefully. You have some kind of powerful presence. I don't know if it's just natural or it's something that you've cultivated actively over the years, but
Yeah, I wonder too. I think because of like in coaching teachers, teachers will often say one of the. So I believe the strategies that we use in the classroom work no matter who uses them, if they choose to use them and if they will use them consistently. And I think the teachers that say to me, well, it's different when you do it, are right, because I've been doing it for longer and because I really want to do it that way, and I really believe passionately that kids respond to that, respond to being able to being allowed for a moment to be the villain in the story, to put away all the things that we tell them to not do, and just say, okay, for this moment I'm going to have this power, and then to be able to put it aside, and then to be able to be the hero, the downtrodden hero, and to feel what that's like, and to go back and forth between those things. So, sorry, that's a little off the point.
no, that's okay. That's great because you're seeing this in the kids, and that's
Yeah.
important. I think
Yeah.
is that so often what we do is we're trying to tell kids what's right and what's wrong, and
And-
you got to follow this strict path, otherwise you're going to become a moral deviant, And I think that's a really important point, and I often make that point to people in counseling is that sometimes you have to listen to what your kid really needs and wants in this moment, and put away the moral code book, because
Yeah.
your child knows right from wrong inherently, and
Yeah.
you hitting them over the head all the time with.
Right.
This is right and that's
Expectations.
wrong is kind of just,
Yeah.
breaking them down. So giving a child an opportunity to be the bad guy, trying it on for size.
Yeah.
I can see that's.
Well, and of course, I'm doing it in a drama setting, so that's a little, and I think that allowing them to have that diversity of like perspective and opinion makes the middle school years a little bit more like it's a continuum. Not all of a sudden out of nowhere what happened to my child. That they're starting to be able to have their own opinions and things like that. And I think it's really important to read to them, to read with them. I think music is tremendously important for the growing brain and for everybody. And our belief in our own creative shortcomings, or that we are not musical or dramatic or artistic, is a subtle and powerful programming for the kids. So to take that chance with your child and in your classroom, in one's classroom, to go ahead, I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit in the circle with Mr. James today, and I'm going to do everything that the kids do. And I've had the teachers that I've had do that. Wow, it's just it's amazing to see the difference in their classroom. And those are almost always the people that end up being. They were like, oh, we need you as curriculum coordinator because you get the curriculum, you get the kids, and you get the curriculum, because they want to see how many ways you can adapt it.
So what I hear you saying is, is that it's okay to be foolish, and you don't always have to be right or perfect at what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's what I've seen when you've interacted with kids, when I've seen you professionally, is that you seem to respect the kids, and I think they feel that. I think they feel when an adult respects them and respects their opinion, and it encourages them and empowers them to try a little harder and do a little bit more and push their limits a little bit more, maybe because they feel it's a safe zone. And you can't fake that, right? Like you either authentically care about the kids you're with, or you're phoning it in, and they can tell.
Yeah, and I think that that's really true. It's like people say, well, you really push them. I was like, but if you ask them at the end of the day or the end of the residency, or like, they're itching for more. As hard as they make it sometimes to like say, well, I get that I know that you know what the feeling is that Cinderella's having, for instance, but I'm not really sure I'm seeing it. Do you think her knees hurt? Do you think she's smiling while she's doing this? What do you think? So, and then they'll think about it, and they'll give it another shot, and there'll be a little more authenticity. And I love this example. I have so many stories. I wish I could talk more. So I had the opportunity to do a residency in social studies for 3rd grade, and they were doing emigration. And as you know, I'm an Irish musician, an Irish storyteller. I studied a lot of Irish history, and so I asked if they would to do the Great Hunger, what most people call the potato famine, and the teachers were all for it. So there's very little illustration from that because nobody could afford nobody
Paper and crayons.
paper and crayons. They couldn't afford anything, you know. So there were some, but so there's not much to show the kids. So, but what they came up with in showing the situations those people were in were like spot on to the lithographs that survived from that time. So we're not just talking about being Cinderella and being the stepsisters or Little Red Riding Hood. We're talking about like historical empathy and being able to connect with people in a different time and place that's a completely different world. That they can go deeper, and be more reflective and have fun doing it than we often give them credit for.
And I think
So-
what you're trying to underscore also is that, you know, we so often think we live in bubbles, right? But learning from history, learning from the past is going to make us better people, and understanding that there's a great big world out there, and you know, understanding about other places and other people. So you're bringing all of that, it sounds like, into the classroom.
Yeah.
In very gentle
social
ways.
studies, social studies, history, you have to be sensitive to what their level is. Like when we're working at SEEKS with the middle school kids, we can get a little more complicated and deal with, you know, more challenging situations, including lunchtime.
What's a lunchtime story?
Oh, I don't, yes, we're going to sit down and we're going to eat lunch, and we're not going to crawl under the tables, and we're not going to throw stuff at people, or we're not going to like run around. We're going to finish it up and we're going to clean it up ourselves, because, you know, we're going to walk our talk and say that we're a little more grown up than being in elementary school now. So, and I mean that we're dealing with complex issues, especially at SEEKS, Charter Middle School, about the ocean and the planet, but also how we, you know, take care of our day-to-day and the person that's next to us, and, you know, those sorts of things. I wanted to say,
being present in the moment is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And
You wanted to say? I interrupted you.
no, it's okay. I'm sure it'll come back down.
Okay.
Yeah, it was about, oh, I know what it is. So, giving the child a device to get through the shopping, like, I get that that's necessary, but there's so many other things that could happen in that moment that would involve the connection of saying, oh, well, look at all these products. I don't know, what do you think of all these products? Have you ever had this? Have you ever had kohlrabi? Do you know what that is? There's so much to think about, so much to look at. And they could be drawing, you know, they could be doing lots of different things. And I mean, I'm not dead set against it, but I can go into a classroom and in 3 minutes I can tell which child's doing 4 or 5 hours of video a day, you know, over the weekend, especially in the summer, you know.
Yeah, and what you're doing, and I completely agree with you, and I'm trying really hard right now not to go off on a rant, because when I see kids at a dinner table in public tuned into devices and not taking the opportunity to talk with their parents, to me it brings on great sadness. Or when I see kids, you know, looking at phones in strollers or in the grocery store, I just, like, it blows my mind that we have created this feeling that, you know, kids need to be stimulated this way all the time. And I get that the parents doing it often feel like they're giving their child educational enrichment, but I think they don't understand that there are better, healthier options that the kid will enjoy just as much. But I think it gets back to what you're doing with the kids, which is you're exercising that part of their brain. And if their imagination gets stultified and tuned out and turned off by constant input from devices, that muscle atrophies, right?
Yes, and that's what I was going to say. You read my mind. We're on the same page.
Yay!
Yeah, it gets taken away because there are people out there with millions of dollars who are, you know, essentially better at it and are putting all their energy behind making sure nobody can look away from that. And I start talking to kids about that really, really early. Look at this piece of art. Excuse me, look at this piece of art, and go deeply into that. So that's, and that's also really gratifying to see that when you take a visual piece of art and you really give them the visual thinking skills and the literacy, that they can still do that, and to watch the glaze leave their brain and leave their mind and start engaging with something that's there in front of them, instead of made only to distract them. You know.
Yeah, and there's a huge money-making machine behind, and I think that's something that we want to think about. I can't believe we're almost out of time.
Wow.
I just checked the clock. We've got a minute left. So,
Really?
yes.
Okay.
It goes like this. So your
so-
final
yeah.
thoughts that you want to share with folks about what you do and why it's important, or anything that you want to say.
I've for a long time been wanting, you know, literally like take it on the road here in Hawaii, take it into other classrooms besides the ones I'm very grateful to work in, but people's homes, you know, singing, you know, concerts for people, you know,
Yeah.
working with kids in a lot of environments, and it doesn't in other places, but we have that. There's a regular concerts for family music,
Right.
and here it's still something that's missing. So I'm
Right.
hoping that'll happen.
Hopefully someone seeing this will realize that they need you in their life, and they will
That would
look
be
you
great.
up on James B. McCarthy Performance Facebook page, and then you have another page, which I think we'll put up on the screen
Yeah,
later.
yeah.
But basically, if they Google James B. McCarthy, Hawaii musician,
Yeah,
stuff
so
will come up.
They should find, yeah.
And hopefully someone will be in touch with you
Yeah.
and share you with their kids, because my kids still talk, every time they see you, they talk about it for on and on and on. And
That's fantastic.
you're very impressive to the younger folks and to older folks like me. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, it's great.
This has been It's All About the Keiki. Special thanks today to my guest and longtime friend, James B. McCarthy, awesome educator, musician, actor, performer, everything you can think of, all in one person. Alelo Studios, our producers, Patrick Taylor and Brianna Robinson. Thank you so much. Until next time, aloha.
Something about